Alright, Schlockmeister fans. Another re-review from my previous channel from the EMANUELLE collection, which you probably didn't even know existed. We're going to watch something called Yellow EMANUELLE. That can't possibly be politically correct, can it? I don't know. Let's find out. So this is George. He's a British pilot, airlines. He and his buddies have some time off, so they're spending it in Hong Kong. And then some thugs come, and well, it's 3 against 1, and they beat him up. Beat him pretty bad, too. 3 days later, he awakes in the hospital, to the delightful sight of his doctor. Focus, focus. There she is. Anyway, he heals pretty quickly, but he doesn't want to go because he really likes Dr. Wong. And she's been taking a fancy to him, too. He's flirty, but
Tell me.
She's a little standoffish. Turns out she's in an arranged marriage to be.
I don't know. I haven't met my fiancé.
What did you say?
The marriage was arranged.
Meanwhile, his secretary Helen is also interested in him. That's Italian Parliament member and future porn star at this point, Ilona Staller. So the two of them have some time spent in the pool, and then they have a romp in the bedroom, which I can't show you. Nonetheless, his heart lies with Emmy.
Can you explain the meaning of it all? Yeah. You've bewitched me, haven't you? The fact is, Emmy, I'm in love with you.
So then we have the love montage as they start to court each other. Of course, it doesn't stop him from spending some time with Helen and sleeping with her, too.
Oh, what's that on the window?
So Emmy Wong has kind of changed her mind and thinks, yeah, maybe I do want George. So she left a note on his car.
What is it anyway? A ticket?
No, it's on. Helen and I both work for the same company. And I pretended that note was an ad for your sake. You wouldn't have wanted to read it, would you? It was a kind of love note.
Let go.
So he goes along with her to her home. Her dad lives on an island.
And although they failed to meet, at least they had 2 tunnels.
So they retire to separate bedrooms at Daddy's house. But I think they're both longing for the other. But they don't stay alone for long. She comes to his bedroom and takes off her robe and stands there nude in front of him, which I can't show you, but it's awesome. From then on, they have a passionate love affair.
You take me.
Helen's jealous.
You're an utter idiot. I know what you were doing. You were humping that bitch, Emmy Wong, all night. But you forget that you kept the keys to my house.
So they decide to move in together. He's got to go back to Britain for a while. Job takes him back home. She sets up the apartment, waiting for his return.
How do you keep him?
Isn't George Taylor with you?
Well, they kept him in London for administrative reasons. Actually, I've got a letter for you. Now, I'm getting the papers we need for our marriage. Be sure your wedding dress is ready or I'll marry you in your white coat. This will be a brief separation, I promise.
She sends the letter back, but Helen, who's also in Britain now, she's jealous, of course, so she's going to make sure that George never sees those letters from Dr. Emmy Wong. He continually doesn't return. She sends letters. He doesn't reply. Apparently they have no phones in Hong Kong in 1976. And she's sad.
He was in London until a few days ago. Now he's in Sydney. Apparently George has finally hit the jackpot. He's found this fabulously wealthy Australian.
So now she's really depressed and she decides to end her life by jumping off a cliff. But then some dude saves her. He takes her to a room and tries to have his way with her. And
you're no damn good. Now I understand why that guy left you. Here, pay for the hotel and go to hell.
she ends up at a brothel.
That is only a muscle that needs exercising. Didn't your mother teach you anything? Your education seems to be sadly neglected.
Meanwhile, they want to give George a desk job so he doesn't travel anymore.
I'm not interested in the Rome, Paris, Berlin, or any other office. I brought that report in 2 months early.
He eventually does get back to Hong Kong and tries to find Emmy.
Emmy Wong.
I'm sorry, sir, but Dr. Wong doesn't work here anymore.
He stumbles in this place for a drink and almost runs into her. He's in full hooker mode now. She talks to her dad.
Her wedding dress was being made up, and I had ordered a new robe for the occasion.
He eventually finds her.
There's so many things to say.
I've nothing to say to you.
Emmy, you're behaving strangely.
The truth comes out, and she finds out that he did send letters, and then she never got them, so
Come on.
peace is made. He wants to take her out to dinner, but she's afraid to be seen because everybody knows she's a hooker.
That's what you want? But first, give me a smile, right?
Here's what I offer. Can you match it?
Who is this person? Do you know him?
Don't worry, I know her. I also know her price.
Look, I think you've had too much to drink. You'd better run along.
I'm on the wagon, pal. But I feel like a piece of ass, and that broad you're with is the best screw in the whole city.
He ends up punching the guy out, but then when he comes back to sit down, he has some sort of medical reaction.
George! George!
I won't try to hide the truth from you. How could I with those doctors? He will certainly come out of his coma, but his recovery will not be gentle. You'll have to accept that. He can only last a few days.
He does get better. Nobody tells him that he's dying, so she gets married to him immediately.
Be afraid.
I believe on their wedding night, after a night of lovemaking, he starts to have a reaction again.
It's fading.
The most wonderful man in the world. You can't go.
But he dies right there in her arms, and then she takes a little knife and stabs herself to death. All right. Let's talk about Yellow Emmanuelle, which is available in that Emmanuelle collection, which I showed you at the beginning. It's also, I'm assuming you can get this as a standalone. I'm not sure. I haven't looked this up in quite a while. But anyway, the movie, I first became familiar with this movie back around 1992, 93. It showed up on cable as Emmanuelle in the Orient. Now, from what I've read online, the DVD is the full version of this. Other versions had kind of a happy ending. So perhaps that part where they got married at the end there may have been where the Emmanuelle in the Orient ended. I don't remember. I could pull up my VHS tape if I wanted to see what I taped, but I don't care enough to bother. But anyway, so this movie is about this British airline pilot who comes to Hong Kong with his pilot buddies. They like to live the Hong Kong lifestyle. They, pick up prostitutes, get massages, that sort of thing. They just have fun, between flights for them. But one night he gets beat up by a bunch of thugs and he's put into a coma, wakes up 3 days later in a hospital to the beautiful Dr. Emmy Wong, who is, hence Yellow Emmanuelle, although her name is Emmy, not Emmanuelle. Anyway, so he starts falling for her because she's a beautiful actress named Chai Li. And she says, well, I'm actually betrothed to somebody else. It's my custom. They live in Hong Kong, obviously. And apparently the custom there is that you have an arranged marriage before you're born or shortly after you're born. Although she's never met the man. She's not supposed to sleep with anybody else until her marriage, or she's not supposed to sleep with anybody until her marriage. But eventually she gives in and the two of them sleep together. They fall in love together. She brings him home to Dad. Dad's kind of okay with it. So basically, they're in love now, and unfortunately, though, he's got to go back to Britain for a while. And he has the secretary named Helen, played by Ilona Staller. You might remember her. She became a member of Italian Parliament in the 80s, and she was also a porn star in the 80s. She was under the name Cicciolina, I think was her name. So she became pretty famous, at least in that area. But anyway, she plays Helen. She's the secretary to George, I think was his name, the pilot. And she's jealous because the two of them have been sleeping together periodically too. So she intercepts the letters that Emmy is sending to him when he's back in Britain. So he never gets her letters. She's heartbroken because he never responds back to her. So she decides she's going to jump off a cliff and kill herself. Now, she gets stopped by some guy, and the guy basically takes her back and turns her into a prostitute. Next thing you know, she's in a brothel and she lives the next I don't know, a couple of months, whatever, as a prostitute. She quits her job and becomes the prostitute. So it was kind of a weird chain that got her there, but whatever. So anyway, finally, George comes back to Hong Kong and he can't find her. He's looking around for her, talks to her dad. Eventually, he just stumbles upon her down at the docks, and she wants nothing to do with him. But then he says, "You never answer my letters," and she's like, "You wrote me?" Or I'm sorry, and he's like, "Yeah," and he said, "Maybe the mail didn't get through, whatever." So anyway, they're gonna get married and fall in love, or get married now. They go out to a restaurant, and there's a guy in the restaurant who recognizes her and says, "Hey, man, I can outbid you. She's the best lay in town." She's trying to cover herself because she knows people might recognize her as the new prostitute in town. So anyway, they get into a fight, and George beats the guy up. But then as he sits back down to eat, he passes out. They take him to the doctor, and it turns out that he has an incurable disease, a disease of unnamed, that's going to kill him in the next couple of days. His secretary knows about it. Other people back home in Britain knew about it, but nobody told him. They didn't want to scare him. They all knew he was going back to Hong Kong to die, though. So as a doctor, she realizes, yep, he's hurt. So he's only going to last a couple of days, but he makes a remarkable recovery from that initial put in the hospital. Goes back home with her. They get married. And then one night, a couple days later, they're embracing, and he says, "Oh my God, everything's going black. I can't see." And then he basically dies on the bed there. And that's really how our movie ends. So Amy Wong is alone again. So anyway, that is Yellow Emmanuelle. What an awful title that is, Yellow Emmanuelle. Obviously not a politically correct title. And there's no Emmanuelle in the movie either. What the hell? Amy Wong. But anyway, the movie itself isn't as exploitative as you might think. Yeah, there's a lot of nudity in it. Chai Li gets naked. Ilona Staller gets naked. Other people get naked, full frontal. And it's that aspect of Emmanuelle, it's exploitative. But it actually has a pretty decent story, and it's kind of an interesting film. It's 96 minutes long. It's even longer than a typical crappy movie, but it was never boring. It was pretty entertaining all throughout. I got to give kudos to this one. It's not bad. It's really not bad at all. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So anyway, that is Yellow Emmanuelle, otherwise known as Emmanuelle in the Orient. I'm curious if anybody else has seen this little gem. I will leave a link to something down below where you can get this, and I think you should. As Emmanuelle movies go, again, not really an Emmanuelle movie, but as the Emmanuelle titled movies go, pretty darn good film, actually. Check it out. Leave some comments. Let me know what you think about it. Yellow Emmanuelle. Watch it. Bye.